Okay. Well, thank you, Caroline, for being here and for presenting this important program. We really appreciate you making the time for us.
And where is she?
She's presenting remotely.
Yeah, from where?
Oh.
From
So
where?
I live in Milford. So I'm currently in my house up in my loft to be able to come and present to you all today.
So go ahead and take it away.
Perfect. So first of all, just want to double check. Can you all see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So hello all, I'm Caroline Brezovec. I am super excited to join you today to talk a little bit about AI. What are some of the things that we can do with it in business? What are some of the things we really shouldn't be doing or that we should keep in mind? So for a little bit of reference of, okay, so who are you and what in the world do you know about AI? I will say I am not an expert. However, it is something that I end up using quite often for my job. So I'm a senior director of growth strategy and operations for a mid-size venture-backed company. So really what we're doing at my company is we are taking a look at how can we offer essentially a software solution to our customers and our prospects. And I personally am in that marketing department. And one of the really big things that's helpful to know, just for the context of who I am and what do I have to do with AI, is I really take over the operations and some of the strategy components of a company that's in a high growth phase. And that often means we're a little bit on the lean side with some of our resources. So the question that always comes up is, okay, what can we do to scale more efficiently? How can we end up thinking outside of the box, but with the resources we have, as well as trying not to bog down our employees, because we know that there's going to be a number of tasks that maybe they're repetitious or they're things that just take time, that maybe it's better use to have them focus on some of the more innovative or some of the things that really require that human touch. How can we help get them to that next step to focus on what they do best and a little bit less time on some of that grunt work initially? So this is one of the things where I've spent some time taking a look at how can AI be used as a tool within our marketing department. And it does have some other business applications, which we will talk about later today, and really use it as a tool to help us be more efficient. So I'm going to quick just start off with what's AI? So I'd love to hear from anyone in the room or on the chat of how would you define AI? What is it? Why do we care?
That's a question for the audience.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, it's certainly, I mean, my limited exposure to it is it's an algorithm or set of algorithms that is designed to be somewhat autonomous. And I think in your particular case, you're interacting with it via a text interface. So it's got to understand the language to a point and be able to interpret that. I am a little mystified still how it can get things as wrong as it can appear based on Tim's presentation last week. And that seems like an easy solvable problem, and easy in quotes, because obviously if it was easy to solve, it would have been done already. But I'll say I'm really excited about this technology. I am seeing it used in some industries already, and I can see the upside potential is enormous. And I think lastly, I don't really buy into this the fear factor that's been generated about it. I mean, I know it's new and mysterious in some ways, but so is all other tech that gets introduced at some level. So yeah, I'm kind of open-minded, but I really would like to understand what its limitations are and and see how we could use it, maybe even in this community to make some things better.
Absolutely. So you hit it on the head, which essentially is, I'll first give you the dictionary definition, which is AI, artificial intelligence, is that branch of computer science dealing with this simulation, really important component of intelligent behavior in computers. So this term, which actually was originally coined in 1956 by John McCarthy, was really defined as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. It's how can we have this tool, this artificial intelligence, to try to take on the task of approaching things that requires decision making or object detection or solving complex problems. As we're going to talk about a little bit later, and again, is hinted upon as one of our audience was answering earlier, is there's still some problems. We can't leave it on its own. And really, I agree that AI is not going to replace us. It's going to be an important tool, however, where we need to understand what's its impact, how can we use it to be more efficient, but also what are its big pitfalls. So that's really coming on to the why in the world do we care about AI? It is already actively impacting our day-to-day, whether or not it is you in your home watching Netflix, you're getting those recommendations from AI, to you're at work and you have various things being recommended to you when you're doing research for specific tools or ads. AI is in so many different places. Today, we are only going to be focusing on a very specific and small, relatively, I'd still say it's massive, but small area of artificial intelligence, which is called generative AI. So generative AI is really focusing on the AI systems and models that allow us to produce various types of content to a certain degree autonomously. There's actually quite a number of types of generative AI, and that can be anything from text, which is, again, we're going to be doing some exercises later on today that will be focusing on text AI. This is really helpful for content generation specifically, such as writing out product descriptions, or maybe it's looking at blogs or social media. What it does is it really helps save time and resources by automating maybe that first grunt work or that initial brainstorming. And essentially it's, in a way, can be a partner with you to have those brainstorming sessions or have those things where you can do that back to back. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm writing, it can take me quite a long time to get started. Or, okay, I have about 5 million ideas. Can you please help me narrow it down? And what's some things we can bounce off to sort of at least vet out the ones that we might want to look at later, or maybe it's not the best for us to address right now. But that's not the only thing. Other areas of generative AI include visual AI. This is an area that obviously can be a whole huge conversation, but it's how does these systems help create images or videos? This one in particular does have quite a lot of areas to be aware of from a legal and plagiarism perspective that we won't go in today, but it is one, if you are using it, it's really awesome to be able to see how you can use it to explore and look at different ideas. But I would be very cautious if you are using this in a business perspective, particularly. And I believe Tim may have mentioned a few of the tools that have been used for various visual, whether or not it's images or videos, such as DALL-E or Pix2Pix. There's a number of those things. A couple other types of generative AI that I just want to give you that overview is interactive AI. So interactive AI, I'm betting you would see if you go to pretty much a lot of your general company websites, because what you might see in the bottom right-hand corner is something that pops up saying, hey, how can I help you today? And that's going to be a chatbot. This is one of the things where it's a generative AI in more than one way. So one, it could be part of AI where it's a little bit less generative, where you are able to provide canned answers if it's going to be going down different branches of logic. But there's also some more sophisticated types of chatbots, which, to be honest, is also some of the things that we're going to be using today, such as ChatGPT or Copy AI, which is where you interact with it to generate that content or generate that output. It's where it's that back and forth to try to get to that output that you're looking at. And then finally, one of the other areas that fall under generative AI is analytic generative AI. So this is really helpful in some areas of business for creating those predictive models. Maybe you don't have all the data currently in your system to be able to do some analysis or things like that, but you have a certain sample. So let's say that I'm running a business and I need to look about what inventory am I going to be stocking for this upcoming year, and how does it get impacted by season. What you can always do is take the data that you already have from this past year or even from different seasons and have your AI essentially generate a model that will predict, okay, based on what you have, this is some of the spikes that we can anticipate, to at least give you a starting point to make your decisions. Again, I very much want to emphasize when we're talking about AI is do not take exactly the output without using some decision making on your own of, does this seem legit? Can I quick do some check facting? It is, again, a tool. It is not a source of truth in any shape or form. So we've talked a little bit of an overview of generative AI, and again, text, image, analytics, and interactive. We're going to, again, as we get down a little bit later, really focus on that text base. But earlier I was talking about why do we care about AI? And when we're looking at business, there's at least two ways we can break it down, which is what are the advantages for the company as a whole, but what are the advantages as well for myself as that individual worker? So you'll see when we're looking at the screen that there's definitely some things in common, such as cost savings and increase in efficiency. Okay, increased efficiency. That is something that we can see both for that company and the individual. But I'd love to actually put a question out to the audience. So to hear some of your thoughts of how do you think AI can help make either a company or yourself more efficient?
Well, can I take,
Yeah, please.
I have to write an article for a newsletter, and I need background information that'll be on the internet in addition to the written presentation of the speaker I'm writing up. And I think that's going to help me save an awful lot of time and produce a good article.
Absolutely. That's a fantastic use case as well, because it can help that individual have that increased efficiency of maybe I want to help gather some of that research a little bit faster, or okay, let's at least get some of the stuff for the newsletter in this general outline, which we'll then proofread later. So when we're looking at a company level, how do we think that's going to help either efficiency or cost savings?
Well, the newsletter is for an organization, a not-for-profit organization, so it's going to help it by bringing a good quality article to its newsletter and informing the readers better.
Absolutely.
Because
and
the reputation of the organization.
And Barbara? Oh, I think you're on mute.
We also had a recommendation in chat, Caroline.
That reminds me, I should pop that up as well. Yep. So It is helpful for tools to help make decisions, and it really does function as that assistant. So one of actually the really big things that's helpful, in my opinion, when it comes to that efficiency on the company level, especially in the cost savings, is it helps with that automation of the repetitive tasks and streamline predictable operations. And this might be something where, okay, I might use AI for getting some of my data, instead of me typing it all up in Excel, to be able to create that workflow so it's getting to the databases that I need. There's going to be less errors for me typing manually. So it might help with error reduction, because especially when we're looking at repetitive tasks, errors do increase when it is used by a human, because if you're doing the same thing over and over again, it is easy to have some of those errors in there. It can also help some of those double checking. Barbara, I see you are off mute now.
Yes, thank you. Tim showed us an example of website design, not the content of a website. And I was thinking, wow, that really can save time. And he showed us how the AI could reduce it to however many words or characters you wanted. What concerns me is, as an HR professional, and you read resumes, I can't help but think how many of these resumes are genuine and how many have been produced by AI. And I'm wondering, testing too. I wonder, online testing, how AI is going to impact people's scores. So
Absolutely. And that's a huge area. And I agree that it's helpful for, let's cut down that time on some of that content creation. And that's creating that cost efficiency. It's creating the productivity. But then there's also the area of, okay, we're having resumes or we're having other things created. Is it entirely by AI, or is it being assisted by AI? Because I think that's going to be that key of the trustworthy component, where maybe it was a great tool to get started, for example, on that resume, but if they didn't go ahead and personalize it or proofread it or essentially add that human component, that's going to have some problems. But it is interesting how a lot of HR tools are now actually incorporating AI themselves for either initial screenings or for detection of AI. So we'll talk a little bit later on of just detection of AI and what's the problem of AI only created content. Cool. So we've already talked about, for both the company and the individual, we have that increased productivity, and it can have cost savings, most particularly on that company's standpoint. We also have increased innovation and inspiration. That might sound a little bit strange at first, but this is where we can use AI to test out ideas, to bounce them off and be like, okay, I need to get out of my day-to-day, because I know if I'm going to be writing something or I'm trying to think of new ideas, but I have 1,000,001 things still left on my plate, it can sometimes be a little bit harder to think outside of the box. So this is where an individual, for example, can use AI to help generate ideas, to either help do additional research or to learn about things faster. For the company, that AI is obviously the use of the individual, helping those talented individuals explore new ideas, things like that. But it's also really cool from the increased innovation standpoint, and that allows for those testing, such as, okay, well, we have these two ideas. Cool. Let's test them against each other. And then the AI will actually be that monitor to be able to balance, cool, test A is winning. After it gets to a statistically relevant level, maybe then it's going to start serving that. Or increased innovation and the inspiration, same with that, really tying back into that cost savings and increased efficiency. If you're a company that's doing pay-per-click ads, do you know that there's the automated bidding, which can be linked up to your conversions, where what it's going to do, AI is going to be like, oh, so you have this ad group around tech classes, and this particular ad seems to be having the most clicks and the most conversions of people signing up. Huh, how about I start serving that more often? And that's where it will start being able to get those insights faster than we would have done otherwise, especially when there is that manual data crunching. But again, I'm going to use my little bit of caution that I'm going to be mentioning throughout is do not leave it entirely on its own. Because what if it's one of the things where, okay, we're getting the registrations, but maybe no one's showing up. Maybe we need to troubleshoot that, and maybe we need to adjust that conversion. So it is one of those things where super helpful, can do a lot of those things where you would be spending so much time in the nitty-gritty details every single day, but it cannot be done without oversight. And relating to that is faster decision making. So as I mentioned with that PPC comment of, hey, I already knew I had these 2 ads, but I know now with that AI, which one is working faster by having those, getting those conversions automatically sent over to my platform of choice, but also it's already analyzing some of those other details of, okay, in that PPC ad, which is a mix of different headlines and different descriptions, these headlines are working better than these other ones. Cool. So let's go ahead and then optimize off of that for the next iteration, or faster decision making, as well as, okay, I need help researching some ideas. Here are the different ideas. And as I'm going through, I can input some of my criteria. It can help you at least narrow down faster. So faster decision making is really important because our business landscape is still dramatically changing. Part of it is due to AI. And the big thing is we need to stay up to speed. And to do that is we need to be able to see changes in our marketplace, in our communities, in our businesses, and be able to react quickly. Because one of our hardest things that we're running into now is, let's say something happened today. And there's actually, no, this reminds me of a great example from quite a lot of years ago, where there was a power outage at a Super Bowl. And there was one company, Oreo, who managed to essentially pivot and work very quickly to create a really awesome campaign, which essentially is you can still dip Oreos in the dark. Essentially, they took on a relevant event that happened within that half hour and were able to get something out into that audience's hands very quickly. That had a huge spike in their sales. This is how you're going to stay relevant, but it also allows you to pivot of, oh, okay, I ended up planning on doing these types of ad buys, or I was going to do these types of promotions, or I was going to do this inventory. We ended up having some type of incident at, let's say it's a restaurant where our kitchen is going to be out of commission for a week or for 2 weeks. What can I do to quickly stop deliveries or to adjust some of those things? This is, again, how we need to act quickly and why faster decision making is critical. And then finally, for the company side, enhance customer experience. How are we providing those more personalized experiences? How are we reacting to what's not working or what is working, and integrating it in the solutions we're providing, or being able to really focus on those pain points that our prospects and customers might have, because we really ultimately want to provide them the best experience that they can have, because that's what makes them want to come back. So that's where that enhanced customer experience and AI is going to be really critical, because it's allowing us to learn about our audience much quicker, be able to react, but also to segment and do the personalization. Now, jumping back, yep, Barbara?
Okay. Chatbot is a form of AI, correct?
Yep.
So when you go onto the customer service website, or you go onto the website of a company and then go to their customer service and they ask you want to chat, and you do, often you get these previously recorded responses, and it is so frustrating because they don't answer your question. Your question is specific and they can't answer it. And they ask, were they helpful? And of course not. And then they ask you to evaluate the experience. And of course, at that point, you're just so, I never want to shop with this company again. I want to, do business with them. So it can have very negative customer experiences too, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And again, this is coming back to AI doesn't solve all our problems. And this is also a great example of how it is continuing to evolve and how especially some of the older ones, which are not taking into account some of those experiences, or maybe they haven't been architected in a way that's going to really have that positive experience. But you can hear there's some slight attempts where it's trying to fix it, such as, was this helpful? Yes or no. Those signals let the bot know, oh, well, we are completely missing the mark. But as I said before, if you do not have oversight from the company level on that chatbot, your experience isn't going to improve. Because what if they're getting a significant number or getting those flags of, no, this was not helpful, or you're having too many people drop off before they get to the desired result, that means they need to overhaul that architecture. They do not have an AI because especially those chatbots tend to be more of a limited AI. They're not going to be in that generative at this point. A lot of them might have those canned answers, but it's taking into account, what are you asking or what are you pressing? And here's the 5 to 10 different options you can go down. But again, it's going to be our mantra for this whole thing. Do not leave AI completely unpoliced. Cool, but that is absolutely a great point. Thanks for bringing that one up. So quick jumping over to that individual. The last two things for what's the advantages is going to be resource availability. Hey, I don't have a content writer to help me brainstorm. Cool, I'm going to use one of the AI tools, ChatGPT or some of the others to help with that initial brainstorming. Or, I need to learn about different topics, such as maybe I want to have, give me the basics of SEO. What are the most important things for me to be looking at? And that's coming with that skill enhancement along with that resource availability. You have that assistant, which Rob had mentioned in the chat earlier on, which is that assistant can help free you up from tasks, especially tasks that maybe it's tedious or people aren't quite as great to do that initial grunt work, to then, okay, we have some of that initial starting point for us to launch, to get creative, to learn new things, and that sort of helps that benefit there. With that resource availability, you're having sort of an assistant or slightly on that teacher side in your back pocket to, again, help you be curious, help you to ask questions, but also to really see where it's not working. Because you can also tell when you're going through AI, if you're paying attention, if it looks real off. And that might bring up some questions that you didn't think about before. So on that note, challenges. This is the big one. Okay, so question to the audience. What do you think is our biggest challenge when it comes to AI? Accuracy, definitely.
I was concerned when Tim mentioned how they make up things so that they can fill in what they want. The AI wants to give you an answer and it may not be correct.
Absolutely. That validity, accuracy, huge deals. There's one other thing I want to really emphasize as well, which is the privacy and ethical concerns. So the privacy is a big one that often gets overlooked. These various AI tools, especially the free ones, the information that you input in there is not private or confidential. So do not put any customer identifying information into those chatbots or to those various AI tools unless you are very familiar with their privacy policies, and also, how is that data going to be used? So this is a big thing where, hey, maybe I want to do some analysis for of what are the different customers that we actually tend to be more successful with. I want to see, maybe look at some of the transcripts, what are the topics they're bringing in. You want to, before you input those into any type of analysis, is you need to scrub any identifying information or PII. So this is important, especially as well for GDPR compliant. This is more important for your companies that are dealing with non-US prospects or customers. So GDPR compliance, just as a quick flag towards that, is the General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union. It's actually, I think, just hit its 5-year mark. In a way, it's kind of the gold standard of how do we store and keep customer data. And most countries do follow components of the GDPR policy. So this is one of the big ones where, especially if you have people who are not US, where it's even more important to make sure you are not including any of proprietary or confidential information, especially from your customer standpoint, because of the fines and some of the other penalties are very harsh when it comes to GDPR. So privacy, cool. We know, we should not expect anything we put in there is completely private unless you are very familiar with their privacy policies. Typically, that will have to be some type of enterprise or some other license. I will say, do not trust any free tools to have any privacy to it. Next, ethical concerns. So I know Tim had a slide on this last week, which essentially is garbage in is garbage out. So whatever is being input can end up resulting in having incorrect data. Okay, we know about that with the data quality, but also, what are your sources? Is there bias and discrimination on them? Which, hey, if it's trained off of the general internet, 110%. So again, do not leave your AI alone, especially if there's certain decisions that you're going to be considering. So actually, Barbara, this was made me think of HR platforms. I used to work for HR software, and if we have an AI involved with those and it's doing some screening, you have to be very careful about biases and discrimination, such as, okay, is there any biases around male or female? Is there any biases around names or backgrounds? Which ones are, and essentially being able to keep in mind, hey, what's relevant to the job versus what's a general connection, but maybe isn't actually relevant. So it's coming into that bias and it's coming to those discrimination. You'll see that also with content creation as well, where it may only show one point of view. Plagiarism, huge one to be aware of. You need to make sure, especially when you're doing generative AI for content, that it is not just taking things whole hog and not attributing. And again, this is where, when you're doing content generation, you need to have someone, a human editor, you need to fact check, and you need to make sure you have your sources there. There are some ways that you can end up building in some of those things where it provides sources, as long as your AI tool is connected to the internet, but be aware of plagiarism. This again is coming back to people also can abuse it of creating college term papers. Maybe they are creating those resumes again, where it's not necessarily pulling that information, but it's pulling from someone else's. So these are very big from that ethical concern. Know what your inputs are, know what the outputs are, and just be aware of, is this something that is also infringing on copyrights? Is this something that is not my work? Are you actually taking some of these things and putting your own thoughts in it? Things along those lines. And then closely tied to this is data quality and training time. So as we said, you can get a whole lot of junk coming out of your AI processes or platforms. And again, that's what it's depends on what data it's looking at. There are some ways for you to control it, some ways there's not. And this is where you need to do those fact checking and being able to push back and be like, okay, let's try this again. And then there's the training time as it's getting more familiar with what is the use case I'm trying to find out about or to write about. This can take time. So occasionally investing in AI, particularly from the whole organization level, can have some opportunity cost to be able to invest in that training, not only of your individual, but also the tools that you're using, setup and configuration. And this one's a fun one, but lacks human creativity. So EAT, we're going to talk a little bit about this in a second, but this actually is really relevant to things like Google web ranking factors. You know what? Companies that only has content created by AI without a human individual on it may actually get penalized because it is not meeting essentially their EAT policy, which I'll tell a little bit more of what that is. But also it may come up if let's say you wrote a blog with AI, did not proofread it, did not edit it, did not have that human component. And then let's say one of you read it. It feels a little awkward. It may still miss some of those components that might be more readable or has, again, that human touch. And then finally, adapting to changing market landscapes. Before the session started, there was a little bit of a conversation going where AI is exploding. There's a lot more tools, there's a lot more opportunities, but even those may take some time to adapt to the changing market landscape. So for example, ChatGPT is still not connected to the internet. They've tried it and they'll sometimes take it away, but this is where as things are changing, how they're trying to deal with things from like geopolitical areas of, hey, we're not pulling in from, I think Canada was it, or there's these different areas of, hey, it's going past paid pages that sort of block where you need to have a subscription. That's some of the things where they're not adapting as quickly to get that internet component. Instead, they may pair up with other tools to be able to add some of those. So adapting to changing market landscape is just making sure how is that tools and those things staying up to speed. So
Carolyn?
I'm going to pause a second. Yep.
I don't understand when you say not having internet. You need internet, don't you, to use AI? So I'm a little
Yes. Yep. So that's a great clarifying question. So when I'm talking about needing internet, it's more of can actively access the internet on the AI model. So the ChatGPT model is trained off of previous data. Tim probably remembers the actual year it's up to. I think it was at least 2020, maybe 2021. But ChatGPT can't tell you about something that happened yesterday or 2 days before. Tim mentioned ChatGPT was trained, the data it was looking at, on data that was before November of 2021. Other tools, you may actually be able to put in a link and say, hey, can you go look at this link and then give me a summary? So that's sort of the difference of, well, yes, we are going to all need internet to be able to access it, but what data that model is it trained on? What can it look at? That's where it's going to have that, essentially, in my opinion, is one of the biggest current and next steps in AI development, is really making sure it can be much more responsive and it can access what's currently on things that happened yesterday or links and things like that. Anyone else have any questions before we move on?
Yeah, do you happen to know that 2021 cutoff on the live data access? Is that due to the fact that Chat GPT went to a pay-per-view business model from then on, or was that some other factor involved in that?
So absolutely. So I do know it's not due to the paid model. Part of this had to do with all of the essentially back end configuration and the ways that they had to build out Chat GPT to be able to analyze, to be able to use data, and really just the models in the background. This is an area that I'm not as much of an expert, but I can definitely say it's not due to the paid version, since the paid versions of Chat GPT currently also are not able to access some of that earlier data or data from last week.
Okay.
Caroline?
But
Yes, and just because I'd asked the question playing with Chat GPT and I happen to have it sitting on my phone, it states that its last knowledge update in September of 2021. So it can't, and this is Chat GPT 3.0. It doesn't have any information to pull from to generate its responses prior to September of 2021.
absolutely.
So at some
Awesome.
point in time, you know, the next iteration, or if if 3.0, the free version, updates its knowledge base, then perhaps you'll get more current data.
Yep, it will definitely be fascinating to see how Chat GPT 3.5 continues to evolve and get some of that more up-to-date data, but also, and definitely something we won't be able to dig into in this session, but how are other platforms being built on top of Chat GPT 3.5 and sort of adding that extra data. But again, huge limitation is it's going on older data. So I'm going to go over real quick something. This is very marketing specific. I will be very upfront, but it does have some things that relate to just sort of general real world. So with Google really wants to focus on providing that best experience when you're searching. It wants to be able to give you what's most relevant, and there's essentially a million and one things it looks at to be able to determine if what they're providing is good, it is trustworthy, whole bunch of different things. It doesn't get it right all the time, but it has a number of things to evaluate. One of which is a component called EAT. And in December of 2022, Google updated another component of this by adding the word experience. So EAT is considering the essentially experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness when it comes to the website or the results that it is presenting. And with that experience and that expertise, what it's looking at is it's looking at your web page and being like, okay, let's first take a look at, is there any background on this website? Has it been previously in existence? Does it have legit traffic that it's not bouncing all over the place? But what it's also going to be taking a look at is the content itself. And within this EAT component, they are actually having various ways of looking at, is it AI generated only, or does it look like it has that human point of view? If there's a couple of tests that I was read some research on where someone did a website that had just AI generated content, and one where it was generated AI, but then it was edited and fact checked by a human. While the AI may have had a initial spike, it eventually bombed and essentially had all its traffic drop and then was even having some issues showing up in Google search results. So there is and will continue to be more ways for tools to be checking to see if the content is authentic, as well as is it being fact checked? Because as we know, AI can have an issue of showing incorrect or not true information, as well as is there some expertise. So this is something that is a example of why that quality also component is important, where AI will get you, let's say, 85 to 95% of the way there, but then you need that human component to reach that end line. There are some cool solutions or browser extensions or things like that that can help you take a look to detect, is this created just by AI? One of which I was using the other day was CopyLeaks browser extension. And it's kind of interesting just to be able to see, cool, if it's reacting as only AI, I would definitely question it a little bit more on the validity, especially if you do not see cited resources, versus having that human component. Obviously, we still love our cited resources, but you can have more of that authenticity, the experience of the actual user, as well as showing multiple points of view. So we're about ready to jump into a few areas of vocab and prompt building. So we'll start to be able to jump in doing a few things. I'm going to pause for a second, see if there's any questions before we move on to getting to build some of the prompts. Okay, perfect. No questions are good questions for this part. So there is a ton of vocabulary when it comes to AI. I'm only going to show a few words. I will say the next slide is not a best practice. It has a lot of text, but Tim said they often share the PowerPoints afterwards, so it's a good reference. But we're going to focus on just a few keywords, and this has to do pretty much with most, if not all, AI models that you're using with for generative AI. So a prompt, essentially, the prompt is, what are you using to give that directions or ask that question to be able to get the response? Your input is your extra information. Are you giving your context, or are you elaborating on what you want the AI to be looking at? Again, for both the input and our output, which is essentially what is AI going to give back to you? That can be anything from text, images, audio, spreadsheets, lots of things like that. Outputs, as I said, it's the response generated by that AI system. What are we going to get from our conversation with AI? The next three things are helpful context as we're building our prompts. First of which is prompt priming. So prompt priming is really allowing us to guide those AI responses to help them be more focused, or to give them that more context and helpful parameters. Otherwise, it may give you something that's really off topic, or maybe it's way too broad of an answer that you want, or you want it to follow a certain tone of voice, or you want to have it follow certain examples. Prompt priming is a really helpful component of building your prompts. Next, there's mega prompts versus linked prompts. So mega prompts, as you can guess, is you throwing a whole ton of data right at AI and having it take all of that at once to give you your answer. So this is a great way for giving a whole bunch of additional context. So you're prompt priming and giving your parameters and what you want to get the output for AI to take into consideration before it gives you the output. But then there's linked prompting. Linked prompting is another technique, but this is where essentially you're having that conversation with that AI tool, where you might ask one question and then you want to build on that and continue to build. This is also really helpful, especially as you're doing some of the more discovery phase. So mega prompts is more, I know what I want and I have all of this extra background, versus linked prompting might be better when you're still building and trying to do some of that research component, or you want to dive in and learn about new things. So there's different ways you can use this, and you can also mix and match and start off with a mega prompt and follow up with some linked prompting to be able to refine and define your answers. Any questions about just this top level vocabulary before we go into building some prompts off of a few scenarios?
We're good in the classroom.
I have a question. All right, so whenever you're doing these, is there a way to make it so that you only use a certain amount of information for one prompt and then you can kind of clean the slate whenever you go on to the next prompt, or do you kind of have to, do something so you make sure that it doesn't grab data from a previous prompt that you don't want it to grab?
Absolutely. So there's ultimately two really easy ways to do that. One is you have a prompt, or you have what I like to call an extra on your prompt, which is, please disregard all previous conversations in this chat. That is an easy way if you don't want to start a new chat. Versus you can also start a new chat in whatever AI tool you are using. When you're using a different AI tool or an AI chat, in most of the tools, it will not take the context of previous chats. Great question.
Is it possible to get all of the text on the screen?
When you get the recording, you'll see it. We
Okay.
can't get that bar to go down. So
Okay.
the bottom of the linked prompting is obscured by the toolbar for right now. There we go. Thank
Oh, good. Well, okay. Too small.
Now it's probably too small.
There we go.
Yeah.
Potentially be able to see.
So,
Okay.
strategy wise, would you start with a mega prompt and then filter down, or would you start with linked prompts and sort of build up, or do both and just sort of see what happens?
So absolutely fantastic question that is going to lead into our scenarios and how to build. But essentially the answer is a little bit of both. It depends on what you're looking to do.
Great, thanks.
Cool. On that note, we're going to quick move over to scenarios. So just to give you guys a heads up before we jump in, I have a few scenarios that I'm going to run through depending on our timing, because I know we've been talking quite a bit, where we are going to we're going to actually start with a campaign promotion, such as how do you use AI to create copy for a PPC campaign, or how do you do social brainstorming with a content calendar or create a content plan for SEO. We're going to be using, especially with the PPC campaign, a model called Create. It's a way of prompt engineering. We're going to do for the social post, we're going to be doing linked prompting, where we're going to be essentially doing one prompt after another. And then the business case in particular, we are going to start off with a mega prompt, as well as going into using reference materials. So before we go in there, I'm going to quick talk about one of the many different ways you can engineer a prompt model-wise, which is called Create. So this is something that's helpful to keep in mind when you are creating your prompts, because it can help you think of what are the things that it reacts to. You can either include all of the parameters of Create, or you can pick and choose. So Create stands for character, which is who do you want the AI to act as? What type of point of view do you want them to get into? Request. What do you want it to do? Examples. Are there certain things you want it to look at to be able to do something in a like manner? Or do you want it to use a certain brand voice? Things along that. Adjustments. Is there any type of adjustments that you'll want to have happen with your prompt? Typically, adjustments might happen afterwards, such as maybe you got an output and be like, please don't include bullets, or please include bullets. And then type of output. What's the format we want it to be in? And then there's extras. So one of the cool ones that we'll be showing with the business case one is you can actually give a prompt to AI and then say, hey, ask me questions for the information you need before you give me your output. So it can help you start thinking and brainstorming versus you can do other extras, such as the one that was highlighted with Tim's question, which is ignore previous conversations or please use resources and cite them. I will say create prompt engineering can take longer to create, but it is a good way to learn and sort of play around with how AI reacts to what you're doing. So on that note, if there's no questions, we're going to
I've got a
jump
question.
in.
Is this all
Yeah.
done in chat? Is this done, for example, in chatbot? I mean,
Which part?
Chat GPT,
Where I'll be doing the scenarios?
where you create prompt engineering. If you do that in chat GPT.
So you can do it, yes, you can do the using the create prompt engineering model. You can do that in ChatGPT. You can do it in pretty much any type of AI tool when you're looking for content output or even image output. So today I am going to be using Copy AI for the AI tool that I'm using. I tend to do a lot more copy-based things, as well as I do like that it links, it can read links. It is built on ChatGPT. There is a free version, but I'm going to use the one that I am most familiar with. But I will show you how we will use the create within the tool itself. And you could use this again, straight in ChatGPT. Okay, so we are going to start off. And again, I am starting off in Copy AI as the tool for today. Again, what I'm doing here can be used in other ones. And as Tim had put in the chat, Copy AI is utilizing ChatGPT 4 as its base. So as I mentioned before, ChatGPT right now is based on some of the historical data, but a lot of the work that has been done for the modeling and a number of tools have been built on top of to be able to take those inputs, being able to analyze data in certain ways. Copy AI is one of them. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the stage for our scenario, and we're going to ask Copy AI to create us some copy for some pay-per-click campaigns to advertise the tech program at the library, to give our example. So I'm going to be doing some just copy and pasting as I'm going here, because when I type, I don't multitask quite as well. So there will be a little bit slower responses at that part. So create C for character. So we're going to start off, and actually, let me pause a second. Is everyone able to see the screen okay, or do you need me to zoom in?
No, we're good.
Perfect.
You can read the screen, great.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're starting off with create. What's my character? So you are a digital marketer for for a town library who's building a new PPC, so pay-per-click campaign, advertising a new tech program. And for this one, we're going to focus on the senior living communities in the areas to help provide enrichment. So that's our C for a character. So next, we're going to a request. What do we want it to do? So from there, I'm adding my request, which is I want you to create 2 Google ads in an RSA format. So RSA is a responsive ad type where it actually does mixes and matches headlines and descriptions. And again, you're starting to see here where AI is helpful as an additional tool where I have certain knowledge that I can help with the inputs versus what we are doing here. We are going to be doing a mega prompt versus you could do this as a link of what do I need to know about PPC first. Cool. So we have our character, digital marketer. Great. We have our request. Give me some ad copy. Next, we have our examples. So there is one of the things, at least apparently my watch wants to talk as well. But one of the things that you can do, which I like, is you can reference materials. So I did two things. So my next part is going to say, please reference. I actually have a document I put together in my info base with Copy AI, which I'll show you in a second, which essentially is where I gave some information about, okay, what is our town library? What's some information for it to be looking at so it can keep it in a context, as well as I want them to look at what are some upcoming classes from the library page. Cool. So for my adjustments, again, typically I'll do that afterwards. And in this next part, I'm just going to say for my adjustment that I just want them to avoid bullets and subheads. And then finally, or for the next part, we're going to do our type of output. And with our type of output, what we're going to add is a section which is saying for each ad, please include 5 headlines and 4 descriptions. The headlines should be under 30 characters and the descriptions should be under 90 characters. And then finally, for my extra in this case, I'm going to have Copy AI tell me why should the ads make a good text. So this is where I sort of took each part of the create of the what's my character, my request, my examples, adjustments, and types of outputs. And then our extras to be able to create a mega prompt. This is quite a bit of content. You can also do a whole lot more, but this is trying to get all the stuff up front. So as I...
What is a paperclip campaign? What does paperclip mean?
Absolutely. Pay-per-click. So pay-per-click campaigns are things that you might see on when you're doing a Google search. And what it does is someone will search for a certain keyword. So maybe we're saying we're looking for tech program. And what shows up at your search results will have a section at the top that says sponsored with what looks like a general search result. And when you're a business using PPC or pay-per-click, you do not pay for every time it's shown. You only pay if someone clicks and get to your landing page. So it's a type of advertising.
You heard pay-per-click and she's saying pay per click.
Per click.
Click, yeah.
Click, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Pay per click, yeah. Yeah, they are very close.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. Sorry, yes, they're very close. So what ended up happening with my mega response was, cool, sure, I will create 2 versions of Google Ads and illustrate why they will be excellent for A/B testing. So Google Ad version A is going to be tech focused. And here's my headlines, which is tech skills at the library, senior tech classes in Peterborough. You can learn tech too, unlock tech possibilities, and your tech journey awaits. For a quick side note on PPC, typically they will mix and match your headlines where they'll have, I think about 2 to 3 headlines in the result, often together, followed with a mix and match of the descriptions, no more than 2 at a time. So these would be some of the inputs I could put in versus another version for my responsive ad would be community focus. And it can do some of the results here where it might be doing things like join our library family, grow in Peterborough community, along with those descriptions. Here is where I had my extra, which is tell me why I should do this test. Okay, because I'm of the opinion you should never test something if you have no idea what you're testing or what success looks like. So the test is to see which one works better, and it's focusing on theme. Are people going to respond more on the tech component or on the community component? As well as it's going to tell here of, we're going to compare our click rates and our conversion rates to help with us being able to see which one's the winner. So this is one of the things where I did a mega prompt to be able to get my answer. So the mega prompt, as well as using reference materials. Copy AI let me use an actual link. It also lets me create resources as well in my workspace. ChatGPT has something similar. So what I have in my info base is a section which is about us, Town Peterborough Library. And essentially it's giving us some information about the library. So I have that when it's building those ads for it to reference, rather than it talks about something not related to our Town of Peterborough Library, but maybe it's talking about the one in Canada. So that's where reference materials help to at least narrow down, and that will mean less fixing when you are dealing with some of those. So I'm going to go move on to our next scenario, which is going to show our link building. And for that, we're going to go ahead and start a new project, so it's not referencing my previous things. I will say just a shout out on what I like about Copy AI as well is I can actually set a tone for which the language should be done in. And the way that does is you can do a text analysis in any type of AI where you put some writing samples in and you do please analyze the tone. For ChatGPT, one of the ways I typically like to do that there is I might actually put some examples of writing that I like or do above my prompt, and I'll say, please analyze the tone above and utilize it in your output. This one actually has it saved. So we're going to go with our next scenario, which is, hey, we want to make some social media posts for the tech programs. So I'm going to start again on my character, which is, who am I? I'm going to be our social media marketer for the Town of Peterborough. And we're looking to promote the adult tech classes. And really for my request, so in this case, we're not going to be doing the whole create, we're just going to do the character and then my request, which is help me brainstorm relevant social media topics and posts to promote the program on Facebook and Instagram. So one other thing I might like to include on here, or actually I'll do that in the next part. So this is where I started off, is much faster. I essentially said who I want them to act as and what do I want the output. They're going to help with some brainstorming. And this is where they'll give some different types of examples. So this is one thing to be aware of. It's giving some examples, but it's not pulling real live stuff. So this is where that brainstorming of, okay, so when I'm looking at social media posts, what are some of the things that I like? Do we want to do a helpful tech tips? Do we want to do behind the scene posts? What do they need to get ready? Do we want to have some quizzes? Such as, this was a great one. Hey there, let's play a game. What's the shortcut to paste an item on your computer? And that's where you can always tease one of your upcoming classes, or can give those answers there. Help for that engagement and that interest around technology. As well as there can be a topic of class schedules and updates, as well as QA sessions. So this is one of the things where I can take this and be like, cool. I, however, want to maybe make this a little bit more personalized to what classes we have on that Town Peterborough URL, which, by the way, I know I've mentioned this a few times. I'm just looking at our adult tech classes landing page. So I'll ask that next question. Cool, please reference the upcoming tech classes. It's going to scan it and take a look. And with this, it said you may want to show relevant tips for, hey, our AI class today, or to the tech drop-in sessions, as well as promoting the reoccurring tech help. So once it's done some of that, this is where, again, it's giving you this guidance, but I still have not asked for specific content or for a specific plan, but it's helping me sort of think some of it through. So I might want to follow up from there for my next question, which is, hey, Copy AI, can you create a social media plan with social media copy for the upcoming tech classes? This plan should be for the next 2 months. So we already have in this full chat our character, so we don't need to keep mentioning that. We have our request, which is coming in each of our linked prompts. And what I'm also asking here is our examples are kind of going off of our previous prompts, so I'm not needing to add those. But I'm changing my type of output in this one, where I want to add the media plan, and I'm giving the extras of the parameters for that time frame. And then it will take that and then put out a proposal and take a look at, okay, our context, great. I love when it calls that out, is based on the tech classes available. They're going to focus on the tech drop-in sessions and the demystifying AI. Cool. For Facebook and Instagram, this is one of the things where we could do adjustment later on and say, hey, can you actually talk about maybe we want to talk about the film club instead. But what it will do is it actually does provide me with some suggested copy. Cool. Love when there's suggestions, but maybe I don't love all of it. And I would, as I said before, I do not want to just take this and paste it. So this is where I would suggest editing. You can edit in a different tool. Grammarly is also great for identifying plagiarism. You can also, at least in Copy AI, which is the one I tend to use, is add to editor and go ahead and make some of those edits right there. And you can either go ahead and type and change, or it does have a fun function of, hey, I want you to rewrite this section, and it will give you some options. So again, always proofread and fact check what you're doing, but this is a great starting point to get you moving. And then finally, with our example of our linked posts is, does anyone know when we should be posting on Facebook or LinkedIn? I'm going to ask.
Yeah, I think probably like 10 o'clock at night, I think would be the best time.
Well, let's see what type of results it gets. And I will say when it is operating on GPT-4, it does take just a little bit longer, but maybe slightly more robust. Any questions as it's working?
Yeah, Caroline, would you elaborate a little bit more on what you just said about GPT-4?
Yep. So GPT-4 is essentially the newer or the more sophisticated version of Chat GPT. And what it does is it has a bit more of a sophisticated set of modeling, but it may take longer to end up running. I will say this may actually be an internet thing for me for this long, just as a quick side note.
Where did you enter the time? I don't see that you wanted
it. Yeah, so I said, what are the best times to post on Facebook for town libraries? And it's currently running, but it seems like I'm running a little bit of a lag with my internet at the moment. Okay, there we go. So based on research, the best times to post on Facebook can vary, but generally it might be 1 to 3 during week and Saturdays, or Thursdays and Fridays between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. And it will give some additional information, as well as in the case of Copy AI, will give me some resources of where it's finding that information, which Buffer and Social Sprout are popular social media posting platform companies.
Caroline, how reliable are those sources? Because we've always heard about that the AI can make them up.
So this is where I like it, because you can actually go and click on it and see that it's a real thing.
Right.
If you can't find it and access it, I would double check to see if it's a real source. And And that's where maybe it didn't give the sources, and that's where for Copy AI or something else that can actively link to things, I would ask for those resources. So in this case, I actually trust this much better because it's also saying, hey, this one is coming from essentially our Sprout Social, or this one is coming from our Buffer article. So I can go ahead and find it or even read on those articles. So this helps a little bit with how reliable is if you can find a related resource and be able to see for yourself. Well, and then we have, just since we're running quite heavily on time, I'm going to do one more big scenario just to show you the extra that I think is the most impressive, which is to ask questions before you get a result. So going to do a new project. And in this case, our scenario is going to be our business case. So what I'm going to start off with is we're going to start off with a mega prompt. Act as a business manager for the town of Peterborough and create a business case to outline the need for charging stations available to the public at the library. But before you start, ask me questions for information that you'll need to create the business case. And again, I'm going to include a mega prompt for this, where I'm going to actually ask it or give it a few more parameters, which is going to be related to the format that I want. Sorry, unfortunately with the paste, it added some extra sections. But for my output, I said, please format the answer to fit the format of a business case that will be shared as a PDF document. This should include executive summary, clear description of the initiatives, benefits, risks, options, return on investment, final recommendation, and then also include headers as output. The reference, also a reference of what should be included, can be found at this URL. So big mega prompt, but the big thing that is helpful is essentially I asked it to ask me some questions. And then this is where you go ahead and wait for the questions, which I will say do change depending on when you put it in. And what you do is you'd fill in some of the questions. So you could say,
Can you answer them?
Yep, so you would answer it. So I'm going to make these up because I do not know these answers, but there has been some questions and interest for charging stations at the library, but we are still in investigative mode. We are considering 3, let's say, stations, but do not have a budget yet. Please include cost for a low tier, mid tier, and high tier option in your output. And we're going to ask, please look up information around usage of devices by library patrons in the US.
Wow.
So it asks the questions. If I knew the answers, I'd be able to do it. And then it will start looking at some of these. In this case, it's going to look up some of the costs for the vehicle. Cool. And it started off with a draft. Again, you would never give this directly to whoever you are going to present, but it gets you started. as well as it shows a little bit of, okay, here's the format I want. Cool, I have my executive summary. Read that through. Is it reflecting what you want? Description of your initiative, benefits and risks, and it will sort of continue to build on some of those things. So again, this is a great way to start your project using a mega prompt. And then again, you can always do linked prompts afterwards to continue to build it. So this one, I know it's a lot of text going on right now, but I did want to at least quick identify a really awesome option when you're building things, which is ask me questions before you do X. One other prompt that I do want to mention, and then I'm going to stop for questions because I know I've spent a ton of time talking. But also just one thing I do want to point out, this one was great because I actually do have cited resources. I can go ahead and click on them. This one is interesting. We're like, it's no longer there. So we may have to go ahead and be like, we need to do some research to replace that as one of the adjustments. Though Pew Research is a source I am familiar with versus, hey, we have this one here. But again, look at it, look at your output, things like that. The one last thing I just wanted to mention as a prompt that I'm a big fan of, if you are just in the I want to learn mode, is you would just do, I want to learn how to use X, identify and share the most important 20% of learnings from this topic that will help me understand 80% of it. This is a great way to get your Cliff Notes, at least to start, because then you can go and dig in your questions. It will not give you everything, and you will not be an expert at this point, but at least you know where to start your questions. So I just threw a lot of quick scenarios up on the board. We're going to move to question and answers, though here's just the quick view of some of the things that will show up for when I'm just learning about stuff based on that response. And finally, we have just going to Q&A. One thing I did want to highlight is you can see in the background, there's a lot of logos on this screen. So I actually pulled from our 2023 MAD, Machine Learning, Artificial Intelligence, and Data Landscape infographic, which is, I'm forgetting who does that off of the top of my head. It's linked in there, but every year they will show essentially a big bunch of the different software in AI right now. They originally started in 2012 with 139 logos. This year, they were up to 1,416. So AI is expanding rapidly. So it's great to be able to get familiar and sort of play around with it. On that note, any questions or comments that I can help talk to?
Quick general question, please. When you give it an instruction, you often say, please do this or please do that. Do you have to say please?
You don't have to say please.
I
think I'm just used to saying please.
I thought maybe please indicated that you were going to tell it something to do.
Nope. No, I've decided that if AI ever does decide to take over the world, at least I can use my manners.
Yeah, right, yeah, you don't want it mad at you, they mad at us, right? Caroline, I have a question, how long have you been using these tools, these AI based tools?
That is a fantastic question that I don't know if I have a very solid answer because I've been dabbling for quite a bit. I will say it's been the last several months to almost a year where I was checking in much more regularly. Okay. But my job deals with a lot of the back end of marketing or technical. So I've dealt with AI and various infrastructure not related to content.
Got it. Okay. What I'm really leaning towards is, and wondering is, what's your confidence level in the tools available right now on a scale of 1 to 10?
So I do think they are absolutely fantastic tools. but I am a huge proponent of the human factor. So it's one of the things where I absolutely will go in and start my projects that way. And then I will go ahead and either move it to somewhere where I'm going to be editing and I will fact check, or if we do things, maybe with our content planning, everything needs, we might have the outlines for our different content pieces put together from AI, but I want either a real copy editor or copywriter. But everything needs to be reviewed by a person, in my opinion. I do not want anything that does not have human eyes on it at this point.
And how would you recommend that we get started? For example, what should I do to do these articles? Do I first go and download copy?
So you can use ChatGPT, you can use the free version of Copy AI, a whole bunch of things like that. So what I would do,
you download it, and then what?
so it is all on the browser, so you don't need to download. So go to your site. You probably will want to make a login, so it will save your conversations. And then what I would start with that create. So with your newsletter, you're saying, I am, or act as the writer for X, and give a little bit of background on your company and say, I want you to think up the ideas, or if you already know the content that you want, I want you to reference this content and put it into a format for the newsletter. From there, so I would really start for getting started as your linked prompting, not a mega prompt. So it's and it's easier if I knew what materials already had at hand, but essentially I want to build a newsletter that gets sent out X amount of time. What information do I need? Get some of that and be like, cool, I have this here's the stuff that we want to include in our newsletter. Please write out the newsletter, include headers and descriptions. So try the linked formatting first. And make sure that you have examples of things you like or you have done, and say, please reference X to follow the same tone or follow the same format.
Please reference. Where did you put in please reference?
So I would do it either at the beginning when you're starting something, or at the end of your prompt. So if I was going in and writing something, I would probably do please reference the above copy to write in the same format. And then I would paste an example right above that. So for example, I did that to get me started when I was writing some recommendations for some former colleagues, where I would copy what I had done elsewhere to get the tone. I would then put in the things that I would really recommend for them, and then say, please provide that output. And then it would allow me to edit and get that output faster. So something that might take me an hour and a half or an hour, because I end up getting stuck, might take me 20 minutes. But I would do something where I typically like to paste the example before I do my prompt, and then just say, please reference the above copy to do X.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I think there is a comment or a question in chat.
Yep. So Rob said, it seems everyone is saying they are AI now. AI is baked into our products. How can we cut through the noise? So huge question that is going to depend a little bit on what you are looking to accomplish. And I will be honest and say some of this is going to be testing and trying. So for example, when I was testing out what AI tool did I want to use for using it for copy, I ended up trying 5 or 6 different things. And what I ended up doing was I picked the ones that I liked based on the experience, which was Copy AI and ChatGPT being that first component. What I would be aware of when you're looking at your different products and cutting through the noise is, how do you like to work and what type of work are you producing? Because a lot of the tools may change based on your use case. So let's say you are very technical and you are instead often doing code. You probably want to look for some type of AI tool that specializes or at least touts that it does a lot more information around building various types of computer code versus, hey, I picked Copy AI, which focuses more on creating content that's typically on that marketing or for promotion type use cases. So that's a factor. Also keep in mind your level of just privacy as well. If you are using or thinking about sensitive information, if you need to do that for any type of analysis, please make sure you are looking at your privacy policies, and most likely you will have to use a paid tool for those, just as a side note. So unfortunately, the answer, it depends, but mainly look at the use case of the tools and try out a few before making your decision.
Caroline, we can't thank you enough. This was an amazing program.
Great,
Excellent.
thank you.
And everyone, if I have
Thank you.
your email, I will send you her slides as well as the recording.
Good. That's great.
Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Caroline.
Yeah.
Thanks.